Okay, welcome everyone to the first workshop series for the sophomore class for the San Diego Unified School District College Prep Planning Program. My name is Greg Kaplan. I'm the author of Earning Admission, Real Strategies for Getting into Highly Selective Colleges. I'm also a college admissions advisor and expert, and I'm joined by my brother and co-founder, Alex Kaplan. And we are both so excited to be here. We have planned and hosted workshops for seniors who just finished submitting their applications in the fall. And we kicked off our program last week for current juniors. And this week, it's our program designed to introduce the current sophomore class to strategies and guidance to make the most of this process. We're both really excited to be here today because Alex and I are both alumni of Torrey Pines High School. So this is an incredibly meaningful experience for us to be here and to speak to families that some of which who are sending their kids to Torrey Pines or CCA or San Diego or LCC and Sunset. We're very excited to be here today and share with you strategies and insight from the college admissions process so everyone can make the most of it. Now, we are having this meeting here today in February of your sophomore year. You are 1.5 years into high school and about 1.5 years from starting when you will begin submitting applications in the fall of your senior year. So there's still so much time to make the most of this journey. And what we're going to talk about today is some high-level overview of this process and specific strategies and recommendations for sophomores who to make the most of the remainder of sophomore year and junior year with an eye towards applying to four-year universities in the fall of your senior year. Now, we will be planning additional workshops and are planning on having additional workshop later this semester for sophomores, as well as programming for juniors and seniors when the time comes when you're in those grade levels. So today will be a high-level overview and strategy session designed to make the most of it. So without further ado, let's get started. And you will just have to bear with me while I try to figure out how to use my Zoom. Okay, so let me just get this in presentation mode. And we are gonna get started right now. It looks like we're off by a day, but that's okay. So what is our agenda for today? In the next 90 minutes, we hope to cover and explain to you how the college admissions process works so you understand what matters most to admissions officers so you can give them exactly what they're looking for when the time comes to apply. We're also going to go over a timeline for the process from now, call it February of your sophomore year, all the way through January of your senior year, when at that point you should be done with everything. We're going to also introduce the concept of building a school list tailored to your long-term goals. While we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty and the specifics of different universities today, my hope is that we can at least develop a framework for understanding which schools to apply for, especially beyond the usual suspects that seems like everyone in our community does apply to, and that you're hearing in the news about these shockingly low acceptance rates. Not only do we want to talk about what you can do to stand out for those really selective schools, but also how we can broaden our horizon and make sure the schools we're applying to fit our long-term goals. And then lastly, but most importantly, I think we're going to have some fun today talking about the things that you can do between now and when you start applying that actually help you stand out and earn admission to your dream schools. So I'm a big believer in explaining how something works before embarking on it. And what I want to start with first is a high-level overview of how the college admissions process, how admissions officers make decisions when they receive your application. So in a little less than 2 years from now, all of the sophomores that are currently logged into this presentation or their parents who are watching with them or alone, when you submit your application or your child submits their application, the application is going to go through a two-step review process. The first step is going to be a review of your numbers, which in the current moment consists of your grades, so your transcript from whichever high school you're attending. And if the college or university accepts the SAT or ACT as a test, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and you choose to submit that score as well. And these are threshold figures, meaning the numbers are designed to winnow down the applicant pool to a period where then they moved into the second round of this process, where they open up your application and they are going to read the essays and activity descriptions that you include. And in that's when they decide, based on your story, who to admit and who to deny, based on your demonstrated ability to add value to that college campus. So without further ado, Alex, why don't you explain to us how the high school transcript and test scores are used in admissions decisions?
Definitely. And as sophomores, it's incredibly important to focus on presenting the best picture and the best story of yourself at the time of application when you're entering in your senior year. And so with that, the high school transcript and the test scores are the threshold for qualifications. But you may be asking, I want to apply to a UC or I want to apply to a Cal State. And so in that standpoint, transcripts are the number one determining factor for all colleges. We've noticed a trend with COVID and the emergence of not being able to find reliable testing centers here in Southern California, that all schools are test optional, and the UCs like UCLA, UC Irvine, Berkeley are not even accepting tests. But what it does, and what the research and what the data has shown, is for a lot of these competitive schools that are private or outside the state of California, applicants are still taking SAT and ACTs. And so in the 2020 application cycle, we've noticed about 73% of students submitting test scores with their applications. This past 2021, the number has dropped to around 43%, but we're still seeing, to be competitive, testing is an important component of gaining admission. Colleges will place a higher emphasis on your 10th and 11th grades. And so it's very important to set yourself up for success by taking classes that are tailored to your strengths in 10th and 11th grade.
Let me just add a little bit of detail to both of those points that Alex mentions. With the transcript, regardless of whether a university is test optional or test blind, test optional means it's your choice whether to submit the SAT or ACT. Test blind means they will not accept it. Regardless of where you're applying to universities in the United States, the transcript is the most important part of this process. This is, high school, for better or worse, is 4 years of your life, but an admissions officer will spend a whopping 5 minutes reviewing your application. So the first thing that they are going to do is they are going to pick up your transcript and they're going to count the number of grades on it that they do not like. And once you reach whatever threshold that is, they simply cast your application aside. The more selective the university, the more stringent the academic requirements are. So there's a lot of, especially in our community. And again, Alex and I are graduates of Torrey Pines. We graduated Torrey right as Canyon Crest was about to be opened for its inaugural freshman class. We understand that there's a lot of pressure to take the most advanced and rigorous classes, thinking that it's, whoever takes the most AP classes, that's the ticket to admission. But as an admissions officer, particularly at schools that receive lots of applicants, and this is especially true with the UCs. Last year, UCLA received 170,000 applications for 5,000 spots. UC Berkeley received 130,000 applications for 5,000 spots. And hometown favorites, San Diego State. And there may be some families out here saying, I would never send my kid to SDSU. When I went there, it was a party school. And I'd say, I agree with you back when you went there. But this year, San Diego State received 99,000 applicants for 5,000 spots. So all of these schools are incredibly competitive for admissions purposes. And we want to make sure that every student is building a transcript that gives them the best chance of earning admission to those schools. Now, in such a brief and rapid review of an application, it's not that scientific. And so if I'm applying to a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, math, as an admissions officer, I am going to pay the closest attention to STEM related classes because those are foundational for the transcript. And I may be less concerned if a student who's applying for biomedical engineering took an AP history class or took an AP English class. So when it comes to the transcript, we want to pick and choose classes carefully, particularly for junior year, because we want to play to our strengths and make sure our children are being positioned for success in this process. Yes, the beauty of San Diego as a district is that we offer incredibly rigorous and classes that prepare you for whatever comes next in life. But when it comes to building a class schedule that works for college admission, we do need to be careful that, in this era, they're very focused on how you are achieving within your school community. And so you may say, gosh, like Torrey Pines or CCA or LCC or SD are so much more challenging or rigorous than other public or private schools in the area. I agree with you. Working with students day in and day out in the district, 100% agree. That said, you are evaluated based on your achievement within your school community. And it is so important to be mindful about the classes, whether they play to your strengths, whether they align with your long-term interests. So when it comes to picking classes, and this is something that we're having conversations with all of our current sophomores right now, is how do you feel about this class, your ability to do well in it, your ability to manage these classes with every other class that you are enrolled in? Because if you're staying up till 3 a.m. studying for a history test, 3 nights a week, what classes are you not studying for? And how is that going to harm your odds of being able to build a transcript that is competitive for the schools that you wish to apply to? Now, again, this isn't just about gaming the system to try to get into a Stanford or UCLA or Berkeley. Grades are threshold numbers. And you want to make sure that your transcript passes that first standard or set, criteria for that school. And with so many people applying to college today, it is hypercritical to have a plan to make sure that the classes you're taking are demonstrating your interest in your particular field and that you're able to do well in those classes as well. So with the transcript, the analogy I use with all of our athletes is the best offense is a good defense. Play to your strengths, don't overdo it. I attended the University of Pennsylvania for undergrad, and I took 4 classes each semester. That's an Ivy League university, and not like, look how special I am for going Ivy. But I just think it's a bit crazy when we have this expectation that our students in high school should be taking 5 or 6 college level classes a semester or a term to earn admission to a very competitive school where, if you're in the UCs, you're on the quarter system. You're taking 3, with the exception of UC Berkeley, that is. You're taking 3 classes a term. So if you go on any college's website, there is you must take 5 or 6 AP classes. You want to take AP classes or honors classes that are relevant to your intended field. So again, if you're a STEM student, focus on the math or science classes because that's the ones that admissions officers are going to be the most concerned with. If you're interested in a social sciences or humanities field, you may want to really demonstrate your ability to thrive and do well in the history classes, the English classes, the foreign language classes, the other social science classes like an AP Psych that are offered at school. Now, in addition to classes that you can take on campus in high school, we do recommend our students to use the summers to take online community college classes as a way to enroll in an additional college level class without the added pressure of everything that's going on during the school year. Because college admissions officers, even if it doesn't, you bring it into your San Diego Unified School District transcript, any community college class that you take for credit can be input into the college application as well. And we want to make sure that it's a wonderful opportunity for a student that's interested in a field that's not offered at school, i.e., I want to study business at UC Berkeley or USC. You can take an intro to business class in Miracosta or a marketing or entrepreneurship class, and that's treated like a college class. And more importantly, it shows you are developing your academic interest for a particular field. So as community college registration for summer opens up, we think it's a fantastic opportunity for students to engage with an academic interest, and also boost their transcript with a class that sometimes you may find be a little less intense than the courses that you're currently taking at your high school. So it's a win-win for allowing you to discover your academic interest and boosting your transcript. Now, a couple things just to keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to your transcript, they're going to be laser focused on the classes that are relevant for your major. But there's certain classes that all colleges like to see because of the benefit that it adds to a student's perspective and their long-term career prospects. And by that, I'm referring to foreign languages. Now, the UCs recommend 2 years, or excuse me, they require 2 years of a foreign language, and that's consistent with your A through G requirements at San Diego. They recommend 3. And anytime where you see 100,000+ people applying for 5,000 spots in a program, when you receive recommended, I think we should all internalize that as required, because if they're recommending it, do you want to find out how it is if you don't have that when the time comes to apply to college? But the reason why I'm going to speak about foreign languages for a moment is not just because it may help you get into college, but I think it's important to understand when you're going through this process, it's not just about you. And this is sometimes a really hard thing to grapple with, but it's about how when an admissions officer is looking at your application, or Bobby or Susie's down the street's application, deciding who to admit and who not to admit, what they're asking themselves is, what can this person do for me and my institution? And with that, universities are making a bet that you will add value, not just as a student attending there for 4 years, but also as an alumnus. And in this world that we live in today, that is incredibly connected despite border restrictions and everything else going on with this pandemic, we live in an incredibly globalized economy where you may find yourself in the future in business or in engineering, working in a team with team members from all over the world, or having customers in a different region. And so going all the way with a foreign language shows that you're opening yourself up to the global and international nature of work. And even if you're not planning, you're like, I just love being in Southern California, I'm never leaving San Diego County, that is totally fine. Just know that a lot of the career opportunities today give preference to people that have foreign language skills, because we live in an increasingly diverse society at home as well. So if you go on any medical school's application portal, or for nursing jobs in hospitals in Southern California, we hear so much about a nursing shortage. But both medical schools and entry-level nursing positions, they'll be very upfront that they give preference to candidates that speak Spanish. Why? Because there's such a shortage of Spanish-speaking healthcare providers. So when we're talking about college, what we're talking about is building a foundation for the rest of your life that your education should cement and solidify for you. And we want to make sure that you are playing the long game and developing the skills that will not only, and having the experiences that will not only help you get into college, but also prepare you for what comes after college, because that is so much more important with this. And the nice thing about this process is that it is aligned with, what's good for you 10 years from now is also very good for you for getting into college as well. So this is my plug for the fantastic foreign language departments that are offered at your high schools, is that sometimes it may not be that fun adding, double checking if you have accent marks on your homework or your tests, but it will definitely help you in college and career. I can say just from my own experience, and then I'll move on, being a Spanish speaker was the only reason I was hired to an investment bank in Wall Street after I graduated from college. And for my brother, who studied engineering and was an engineering by trade, even in his day-to-day, relied a lot on Spanish in his job. So it just opens up so many doors. And again, this isn't just for Spanish, but it could be whatever language you choose or currently are studying, is just to keep going with it, because it will open doors in college and career. Another point I want to bring up on the SAT and the ACT, just to elaborate on what Alex previously shared, is that the UCs will not be accepting test scores, whether the SAT or ACT. You have a 36, fantastic on the ACT. Unfortunately, it will not be used for admissions purposes either at the UCs or the Cal States. That said, in the first year and a half of this pandemic, what the results have shown is that 75% of students that were admitted to highly selective universities that did accept test scores submitted them. And if you are coming from a community where there is the resources and time to invest in the test prep process, there is an expectation that you will have a test score. Said differently, if you live in the San Diego Unified School District and you're logging in for this, know that we are a community that places a huge premium on education, and that on average, students here have the time and or resources to study for these tests. And while yes, there are students that are getting into these schools without test scores, it provides another objective data point that gives admissions officers a reason to admit you. So if you are particularly interested in the Ivies or the Stanfords of the world, these schools, they have 1% to 5% acceptance rates for non-recruited athletes, non-mega legacy students. It would be in your best interest to have a test score that is competitive with those score ranges. Every now and then you do hear of students that do not have those scores, but on average, you want to, or excuse me, let me say this way. I think you would not try to hold out hope that you'll be an exception to that rule. And it doesn't matter whether you take the SAT or the ACT. All colleges are agnostic if they take both. All colleges now superscore both the SAT and ACT. But having a test score is another objective data point in an era where over half of college-bound high school seniors have an A grade point average, something above a 3.7. So this is particularly important for those who are shooting for the Ivies, the Dukes, the Stanfords of the world, is that test scores we find do make a difference. Now, it does not matter which test you take. 80% of students have a clear-cut, or excuse me, 80% of test takers have a clear-cut preference for one test over the other. And that preference is worth up to 100 points on the SAT scale. So it's back down out of 1600 again. So it could be worth 100 points closer to your goal score. And we just want to encourage our students to get scores that are competitive with the ranges, the published ranges of admitted students. So if you were to go Google, what test score do I need to get into USC, for example, very popular school in the district, the range would show you that the middle 50% of applicants on the ACT at USC have a 32 to a 34 on the ACT, which is out of 36 points. That means 75% of the applicants that submit test scores have a 32 or higher on this test, which I know is absurd and crazy when you think about it, because that's a test score that puts you in the top 3% of test takers. 25% of students have higher than a 34. And so if at USC is your dream school, we just want you to be informed about what test scores are competitive for those schools. And test prep looks different for every single student. We're always happy to provide suggestions, whether you check out a book from the library at school or from the community, or you work with a tutor or take a group class. These tests do not measure skills necessarily taught within school. These are aptitude reasoning tests. And so they are artificial universes where you need to understand the rules of the game to do the best that you can on these tests. And so identifying which test is the right fit for you, and then later understanding where do you have room for improvement and studying those skills. Well, it could just be you need to learn how to take to do the questions quicker, or maybe the English grammar rules. It's been a while since you've been taught the difference between a colon or a semicolon. Whatever it is, everyone comes in these tests. I've yet to see someone who is just a naturally gifted, insane test taker right off the bat. And so it doesn't matter where you're starting, because once you start studying for the test, you realize like it's just a game where you're learning the concepts and learning how to apply it in the testing conditions with the time pressure. We encourage all of our students that are interested in studying for the SAT or the ACT to take the test, or excuse me, to start studying for the test in the summer between 10th and 11th grade. Why is that? You can study for the test without the pressure of having to take all of these classes that you're taking in high school, and you could just focus on that as if it were a part-time job, and then start taking the test in the fall when you have over 10 times in theory to take it between when you start in the fall and when you submit your applications in the fall of your senior year. So if you have a bad day or you get sick the day before the test, that's not your only shot to take it. You can take these tests as many times as you'd like. Colleges will give you credit for your highest scores or the subsections that get you to that super score. So you have every incentive to start studying early, and just know that, if you get that test score that's competitive for the school, great, you submit that score. And if not, that's fine. You don't have to, and they'll never know. So you have everything to gain and nothing to lose when it comes to taking the SAT or the ACT. But the most important part of this is to, one, figure out which test is right for you, and then to have a plan that makes sense for you and your family when it comes to studying for this test, where you are preparing to deconstruct this test and beat it, and just get as many questions right as possible to get a score that reflects, that would be competitive for the schools that you're interested in applying to. So again, numbers are a threshold to get in this process, where if you have the grades that they're looking for and the test score, if it's optional, that's the point where you then move into this next round of this process, where they're going to open up your application and they're going to read the essays and activity descriptions that you include. Now, one point that I want to bring up before we move on, and again, Alex and I, we're going to include our contact information at the end of this. Feel free to ask us questions or contact us, but something that we do spend a lot of time with our students talking about is their test prep strategy and making sure it makes sense for their overall goals. For any family or person that has seen changes announced to the SAT, these changes will take place in the fall 2024 cycle for testing. Sophomores will be graduating in June of 2024. The changes to the SAT will apply to the class after everyone who is a sophomore on this call. So any changes that you have seen or heard of to the SAT do not apply to your year, so you don't have to worry about it. We are anticipating changes to the ACT as well, but we expect that those changes, this is kind of like, monkey see, monkey do. If one changes something, the other one follows suit. It's a duopoly like Coke and Pepsi when it comes to soda. But these changes to testing any additional changes will likely apply after your applications are submitted and you're starting school. So, but if anything does change, we of course will be updating you in these webinars in March and in the years to come as well. So you have nothing to worry about. I think right now what the main focus should be on is figuring out where do we stand with these tests and what is our plan for studying for these tests, because that is the most important part of that process. Okay. Testing always and grades take up a fair amount of time. Now let's talk about the fun part, which is you have the numbers, and you have the numbers. What happens next? And so if you do have the numbers, what we want to focus on is making sure that you have a story that demonstrates your ability to add value to a college. And we're going to be talking about this in a lot of detail in our next webinar on March 2nd. But if you're at this point, it's no longer, does Bobby or Timmy have a higher test score down the street or better grades? It is designed to measure your ability to add value to the college through the essays and activity descriptions. And the three key traits that they are looking for in this process are grit, leadership, and passion. Grit is defined as your ability to overcome obstacles. And the way you demonstrate that is not necessarily getting beat up on a sports field. It's having a part-time job and showing that you can deal with life's day-to-day challenges. Leadership speaks for itself. And then passion is your academic passions. Because all of these, most of the private schools you will apply to or the UCs are going to ask you, what have you done to further your academic interest outside the classroom? Or why do you want to study at this university? And we hope that over the course of high school, you will have engaged in experiences that allow you to reference what you've done to develop an academic passion and seize it and build upon it. And again, we will be covering this in our next workshop on Wednesday, March 2nd, with specific recommendations for activities that you can engage with that will allow you to build the evidence to then tell the story persuasively in the essays. Alex, do you want to add anything to about the story, or if not, you can take it away and talk about the timeline.
Definitely. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the timeline as sophomores. And one of the most important things that you as a sophomore should be thinking about is how do you plan your second semester and what are you doing to focus on this holistically? So, what we recommend for our sophomores is focus on keeping up your grades. That's the most important thing that you can be doing right now. And so, emphasize on doing what you can to stay up and current with your classes. It's the start of a new semester, keep current. We recommend all students, regardless of where they have stood on the PSAT, to take an SAT and ACT diagnostic. It's a good indicator to show where you stand if you take the SAT or ACT at that moment without any sort of preparation. So we highly recommend, and if interested, we can provide some resources for these SAT and ACT diagnostics. And just as Greg alluded to in the previous slide, explore the summer and utilize your time away from school to develop that passion academically and take part in opportunities that support those passions. So when you do write your college applications, you have activities, you have things to support why you're passionate about engineering, for example, why you're passionate about business. It can be as simple as taking a community college class over the summer. It can be shadowing a family friend, or it can be a part-time job. There are a lot of things that you can pull from your day-to-day life that support these passions, and exploring opportunities in the summer is one of the best things that you can possibly do. As you approach the summer, prep for the SAT and ACT if you plan on taking the standardized tests. It's a great time where you're not in school as much as you normally would be, and you can use that 10 to 12 weeks to make headwinds and really prepare for the tests. And if the tests are offered in your area, take them in the summer. It really gives you a good opportunity to focus on preparing. And then with that, focus on these growth experiences. This is your time where you'll have a little bit more free time. What passions you are, use that time to explore those from a growth experience standpoint. And as Greg alluded to as well, we'll cover what things you should be focusing on, how you can explore these passions at a detailed level in our second workshop, which is coming up on March 2nd.
And just one thing I want to add, Alex, to what you said. This is particularly true for schools that are incredibly selective, is they're looking for evidence that you have grown in ways that are appropriate for high school students. So it's not, I want to go to some school that's very competitive for engineering. I need to go, find the terminal digit of pi at a lab this summer. It can be appropriate for high school students, but we just want to make sure that all of our students make the most of this summer and next summer to engage in experiences that allow them to write about how they have, developed their passions and developed as leaders and made an impact on their communities. And we get how much work a lot of you are doing every day, and the commitments you have with sports or an instrument or the arts. And summer is just sometimes the best time to fit in everything that you don't have time for. And we're always happy to provide recommendations or suggestions for experiences that speak to your unique academic interests and passions. But the webinar on March 2nd will be a lot more detail. Again, today's just high-level overview of what to expect from here on out.
As you approach your junior year, your focus starts to shift a little bit more to preparing for the college applications. And so as you see the reoccurring theme, continue to focus on your grades. Junior year is one of the most important years academically. Colleges will take a strong look at your junior year grades, so continue to focus on those grades. If you haven't taken an SAT or an ACT, it's a great time to consider it. Or if you're not happy with your score, you can take it again. Like Greg mentioned, if you start early and start to focus, there are potential of 10 opportunities to take a standardized test. So this is your opportunity to focus on the testing and utilize that time where it's not the crunch time of entering in your senior year to focus on taking the SAT and ACT. Continue on building that story. Pursue passions that support what you're going to be talking about in your college applications for these selective schools. As you approach the spring, again, focus on the grades, but start to create this preliminary college list. It's very important that you have a strategic plan when you're entering in the college application process. We've noticed when students have a plan, when they know exactly where they want to apply, and they have a targeted number, it takes a lot of stress out of this process. If you cast too wide of a net, or you have too ambitious of a list and you want to apply to 50 colleges, which I've had students who've done before, it becomes an overwhelming and an exhausting process. And so some of the nice aspects of these applications, whether it's a UC or a Cal State or the Common App, certain aspects of the application are shared, but it's still a daunting process if you have too ambitious of a list. So thinking about it in the spring, entering your senior year when you're a junior, is a really good time to start to develop that preliminary list and see where your grades come, where those testing numbers fall, and that will really start to illuminate a clear path to where you're going to apply. And also spring break, summer break, these are great times to visit colleges if the campuses are open. I know there's been some fluctuations with the UC campuses and a lot of college campuses where they're closed, but if available in your junior year, take a visit to the college campus. You can feel the energy, you can kind of see the day-to-day, even tour some of the academic programs. It's a really good opportunity to solidify if that's a college that you would want to apply to. And then what we recommend as you end your junior year and you're in the summer entering your senior year, begin to work on the college applications. It's critical to take advantage of early deadlines when they're available, and it really reduces the stress at the back end. Starting early allows you to use that summertime where you're not focused on classes or your job or any of these other types of things like sports, and you have additional time over the summer. It reduces student stress, it reduces the parent stress. And then you can still continue to work on these summer experiences because you have that entire summer entering your senior year to really build that experience to solidify your application.
Just a few other points I'd like to add to this. Every school that applicants apply to will have its own set of essays potentially. And yes, there's a lot of overlap between prompts, and what we do with our students is put everything into a spreadsheet and identify where there's overlap so you're not reinventing the wheel. But come senior year, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, if you're having to say, hey, I need to study for a math test or work on this college essay and then still go to my sports practice, that's a lose-lose proposition if something has to give. So because in the fall of your senior year, you really are, it's go time. Like these deadlines are quick and they creep up on you like in a blink of an eye. And so, yes, these are the deadlines for the different schools that's going to be covered in much more detail as you get older and progress through this. And I want to remind everyone that this presentation will be recorded and this slide deck will be accessible on the district's website for college and career prep with all the other fantastic resources that exist there as well. So as you can see, the deadlines, between November and January, you're going to be applying. So you want to make as much progress, not this summer on the essays, but next summer. Okay, moving on, just because there's so much to talk about as it relates to applying to college. Thank you, Alex, for that. What I'd like to speak is very high level about crafting an appropriate school list. I think there's so much anxiety about applying to college because you're hearing these horror stories of students with 5.0 GPAs, perfect test scores, being rejected from their top choice schools. And even some of the schools that for the parents who are listening to this, schools that weren't that difficult to get into 20, 25, 30 years ago are incredibly difficult to get into today. So in general, there's three types of schools that students, when it comes to odds of admission, apply to. There are reach schools, which are just, overwhelmingly likely, very low acceptance rates for where your grades and test scores fall. And again, this isn't about an individual student. This is about the number of applicants. So when there's 120,000 people applying to UC San Diego, which is down the street for 5,000 spots, that is a reach for everyone. There are targets where, based on where your grades and test scores lie, you feel that it's about a 50-50 chance of you getting in based on the number of applicants applying. And then there are safeties, which are probably north of a 50% chance based on the number of the acceptance rates and where you fall within that. And so it's really important to make sure that you have a few backups or safeties. Certain schools are just reaches for everyone, and that's through no fault of any other applicant. And I thought it'd be really helpful just to acknowledge that this process has changed so much. So in blue on this slide, this is the year I graduated from Torrey Pines. And there are certain schools out on here, like Boston University, 15 years ago had a 60% acceptance rate, meaning it was more likely than not that students would be admitted when they apply to BU versus the 18% that it was last year. And since the pandemic broke out, the number of applicants has doubled in many of these cases, so that these numbers are sometimes half of what they were in 2021 that they were in 2019, because there's so many people applying. And again, this is not an attack on anyone listening to this today, but when a school like my alma mater, Penn, which has now, I believe, something around a 5% acceptance rate, it means that 95% of applicants that apply are not going to be admitted. And the overwhelming majority of students that are incredibly qualified, that have the grades, that have the test scores, there's simply only so many students that can be admitted from an affluent coastal California community like the San Diego Unified School District, or in folks like in Newport Beach or in the Bay Area or in nice parts of LA. So we just need to be very mindful of what this means and how important it is to have an open mind. What you're not hearing is that this cannot be done. It just, especially for some of the schools, and we have many students going to some of these incredible schools that are included on the slide for this year. But what we really need to be mindful of when you see statistics like this is the importance of having an open mind and making sure that your bases are covered and you are applying to a wide variety of schools that guarantee that there are at least one school you will get into that will bring you to your long-term goals. Not one of these schools on this list has a monopoly on the path to success. It's not that you must go to an Ivy League or a Stanford if you want to go work at a Google. In fact, San Jose State is the #1 feeder for programmers into Google. Why? Because the campus is located down the street, and you could, in theory, go intern at any point in your college career if they'll take you, and start working your way towards building a career doing something like that. You do not need to go to an Ivy League university to get into med school, to get into law school. These schools are fantastic, and there are things that you can do, which we will talk about first on the grades and next on March 2nd when it comes to building a story to give yourself the best odds. But we just need to go in with eyes wide open and recognize that this process now requires a heck of a lot of strategy, because it is so much more difficult to get in today than it was when either Alex or I were applying or any of the parents were on there. And so I always like to tell students, because it's one of the most popular schools, that USC 15 years ago was so easy to get into that it was a lot of students' backup schools, including a lot of my friends and mine, because it was like, if you just had the decent grades and a test score, it wasn't the 9% acceptance rate it had today. Or UCLA was just so much, we received so many less applicants. So we just need to be very mindful of how competitive these schools have become, because it's just not the same process than when we were, and it just requires us to be a lot more strategic. Which leads me to my next point, which is, all right, so we may be having a little bit of heart palpitations when you're seeing those statistics. What can we do to give ourselves the best chance of getting into these schools? If this is your dream, and again, it's not the end all be all, but if you have the grades, if you have the test scores that make it through the first round, it all comes down to you demonstrating your ability to add value. And that is told through the essays that you will write, both your main essay and your supplemental essays, and then the activity descriptions. And with the activity descriptions, again, all this will be covered on Wednesday, March 2nd. And the Common App, there's only room for 10 activities. And you get 150 characters for each activity. That's a tweet. So it's not who does the most activities, but who does the activities that are the most meaningful to them, that help them tell the story of how they're going to add value to the college through the way they have grown. Now, what I want to talk about briefly is the main essay, which is the Common App or Coalition personal statement. So you may be asking, what does a college essay even look at? And we've included as a link in the slide deck, which again will be available on the district's webpage, 2 chapters from my book, Earning Admission, which spell out, provide analysis of college admissions essays that work and an essay that doesn't, and the reasons why. but this is just 500 to 650 words where you're telling your story. And you could write about anything in these. These prompts are so open-ended. What's important to understand is with 500 to 650 words, what admissions officers are looking for, and this is one page, single-spaced of text, is that you are telling your story. And it's not necessarily what you have done, but how you have grown. Because the growth that you have in high school is that it engenders perspective. And what they are looking to understand is what motivates you. How do you see the world? Because if they can understand what makes you tick, they have a really good understanding of what you're going to do there and the value you're going to add to the colleges. So again, this is not about I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, because in 9th grade, I found the cure for cancer. In 10th grade, I won the Nobel Prize. And in 11th grade, I sold my startup for $1 trillion. It's no, this is how I've grown doing normal things in high school that shape the person I am and the person I want to become. And we will be talking about this when the time comes. But again, for families that are curious and interested, please check out chapters 3 and 4 of Earning Admission, which are linked to this presentation, because they will help you understand what actually matters in this process from the experiences you have outside the classroom that will give you the experiences you need to reflect upon in these essays. Because when you have one page of text, you're telling one story and how you grew from it as a result. It's not about all the stuff you've done. Now, I want to go back one slide. You have the one main essay, but then you also will have a handful of supplemental essays. And these are typically 1 to 2 paragraphs where you will be explaining why do you want to study a specific major, or why do you want to go to that particular college, or the things you've done to be a leader in your community or make your community a better place through community service, or your values, particularly if you're applying to a faith-based school. So again, when we talk about activities and growth experiences in your story, again, Alex brought that word up. I lost track, and I'm glad that he did that way. Your story is told through these essays, and they make decisions of who to admit and who to deny if you have the numbers based on this story. And in an era where there are just so many people applying, there isn't a magic story that you have to tell. It's not like when Alex or I were applying to college, they were looking for, did you have the sport? Did you have the service? Did you have the leadership? Did you do the part-time job? Did you do whatever it is that they're looking for? Very formulaic, is that they're just looking for passion. They're looking for grit, and they're looking for leadership in whatever it is that you're passionate about. There's no magic activity or experience or number of experiences that you need to have. It's just the ones that help you explain the type of person that you want to become. So while this process has become so competitive at some of these very selective universities, it's also become liberating because college admissions officers are giving everyone carte blanche or blank check to just say, whatever it is that you actually enjoy and want to do, go do and be and develop in those ways, and tell us about that. So you don't have to be the kid down the street if that's not you. We've had students who have earned admission to top computer science programs who have taken their passion for computers or for video games. And gosh, if I had $1 for every parent that I met who said, all my kid likes, my teenage boy likes to do is play video games, I wouldn't have to work. But if you love video games, you can turn that into a college application, so long as you show that you're developing the coding skills, and maybe providing. We've had students do YouTube channels on video game analysis to teach math. Let's turn your passion into something that is making your parents pull your hair out into a story that can help you get into college. And I'm here to tell you that you can do that. And if that is your passion, you can, so long as you channel in a way where it's not just about playing Fortnite. It's, I guess, developing the skills to go build the next addictive game that will make you trillions of dollars, and where you wouldn't even need to go to college. But that's a topic for another day. So again, please check out chapters 3 and 4 of Earning Admission. And we're going to be talking about in our next workshop about different experiences that you can have that will help you prepare to tell your unique story when the time comes a year and a half from now. Okay, this is always a fun one to talk about. And I think it's something that is just really important to keep in mind. It's not something that anyone needs to know for today as a sophomore in 2022, in February 2022, but it's something that we're talking about now with our juniors in San Diego District, and we'll be talking with you again next year and when the time comes to apply. But you may be saying, okay, Greg, we and Alex, we understand that we need to engage in meaningful experiences. We know we need to have the grades and the test scores that are competitive for these schools. What else can or should we do to give ourselves the best chance of earning admission to schools that are great fits for our goals? And the 4 key components of this that we're going to talk about briefly tonight are the type of application you submit, keeping an open mind with private universities that offer enormous scholarships that bring you closer to your long-term goals, being strategic with your major selection, and if you're concerned about disclosing your background, what your obligations are on that. So again, we're going to talk about all 4 of these tonight, high level, and what you can expect from us in the years to come is more explanation of this when it's actually really relevant. So the first thing I want to talk about is early decision and early action. And you may have heard of some students applying what's called early decision to a college. What early decision means is that if you apply under this program, you apply by November 1st of your senior year. And if you are admitted to that school early decision, you can only do it for one school. If you apply early decision to that school, you are contractually obligated to withdraw all of your other college applications and enroll in that university without knowing any of the other results. So if you apply early decision to Penn and get in, guess what? You're going to Penn. If you apply early decision to Boston College, guess what? You're going to Boston College. So you want to be sure that this is a school that you'd be very happy at and that you can afford financially, and that it's a right fit for you. There is another type of early application called early action. You apply November 1st and you find out by Christmas as well, but it's not binding, meaning you can see about all of the other decisions and then make a decision by May 1st. Now, with early decision, you can do one. Early action, you can do as many that offer it in an unrestricted way. And you're saying, gosh, we'll just apply early action everywhere. You can if it's this specific schools allow you to do it. And there's some nuances to this that aren't appropriate today. But what I think is important to understand is that early decision and early action boosts are not created equally at all schools. Again, this process is not about what makes us special. It's about the schools constructing a class with students that have skills, perspective, and interests that they need to make their well-rounded class. So if I'm an admissions officer, it's not about, gosh, Bobby here is just incredible, I have to have him. It's, I need a trombone player for my orchestra. I need someone that's going to be working in our autonomous vehicle lab. I'm looking for these types of students. So early decision, early action, this is oftentimes a recruitment tool for students that are recruited athletes or have mega legacies, meaning a parent or grandparent went to the school and they've donated enormous sums of money, millions of dollars to these schools. So it's not created equally at all schools. The Ivy Leagues historically take athletes and mega legacies, which I call them, in the early decision rounds. So we see this, my alma mater, Penn, a 15% early decision acceptance rate versus 4% of the regular. Like, gosh, I'm going to ED to Penn and I'm going to have a 15% chance of getting in. It's very important to understand that all recruited athletes to Penn must apply early decision. If you've donated or if your family's donated a building to Penn and you're hoping to ride that wave in, you have to apply early decision. So there may not be that many spots for the normal applicants at these schools. And while some of the students we've worked with have been admitted to Penn early or have been admitted to Stanford early action, we always say that's the exception, not the norm. So early decision is important to understand because when you look, or early action, when you look at how colleges are building their classes, Boston College is admitted, over half of their class, incoming class is admitted early decision, meaning there's not that many spots in the regular round at any of these universities. Claremont McKenna, 70% of the incoming class is admitted early decision. So you are fighting for scraps in the regular round at some of these schools. And that's just the way this process is. So we encourage our students to be strategic applying early decision, because if you do it at a school that gives you an enormous boost for your type of profile, that can sometimes open what, like we like to say, is it can part the Red Sea for the type of student that you are. But we need to be mindful, because sometimes these statistics are a bit misleading. So online research or a counselor can help you work through the nuances of this. But I bring this up now because there's so many questions about what can I do? Should I apply early here or there? And we just want everyone to make very well-informed decisions. And if this isn't for you, you're like, hey, I can't commit to a $300,000 education, that's fine. You don't have to do this, but this is just something to keep in mind that will be discussed in much more detail as we progress through this. I also want to talk about the importance of applying to private match and safety schools for merit scholarships. A lot of folks say college is so expensive, and you're right. The only thing scarier than getting into college or figuring out a way in is figuring out a way to pay for it. Private universities, I think NYU is up to $84,000 a year when you include tuition and the exorbitant cost of room and board in a place like New York City. And so we want all families to be mindful of this investment and to make sure that they maximize the return on investment. And the way you maximize return on investment is either you A, decrease the cost, or B, increase the output of, like, what can you do with a college degree? And what we'll be talking about in later webinars is, different fields that definitely open up potential for you to be a healthy, happy, and financially independent adult. But what we do want families to consider, at least at this stage of the game, as you're saying, it has to be a UC, it has to be a Cal State because of the cost. We get that. But is to keep an open mind with applying to private universities that are known for being generous with merit scholarships. Because I can speak from my own experience of going to UC Irvine for law school. It was and I guess that is a public school, but, and so maybe it's not the perfect example, but UCI at the time was an unranked law school. It was fairly new, hadn't been fully accredited. And it wasn't at the top of my list when I was applying to grad schools. But when I received essentially a full tuition scholarship, it made way more sense than any of the other very highly regarded, highly ranked law schools that I was admitted to, because the price was right. And had I not gone to a law school where I had a full tuition scholarship, or close to a full tuition scholarship, I should say, I never would have been able to pursue my passion, which is college admissions advising, write a book, start a business. And I just want every student to make their education work for them. And the cherry on the cake for me is I had better job prospects coming out of an unranked law school in the legal profession than coming out of the top ranked business program in the world. So we are not school snobs. We want every student to have as many options and opportunities that make sense for them. But part of this is also, if cost is an important consideration, and it is for most people in the country, maybe not for everyone in the district, but for most people, cost is the number one concern, is to keep an open mind with applying to schools that are known for being generous with merit scholarships that fit your long-term goals. An example could be Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, which is known for generous half-plus tuition scholarships to make the cost comparable or less than a UC. And if a lot of our students are really interested in the health sciences fields, 65% of Case Western pre-med students are admitted to med school, which is a multiple higher than UC students because they're affiliated with the Cleveland Clinic. They have amazing research opportunities. SMU, which has a fantastic business school and entrepreneurship programs, and same with Chapman with great business school in Orange County. We just want students to be mindful of applying to some of these schools because they may make sense when you get that enormous merit scholarship. And merit scholarships are closely correlated to test scores and grades and the overall strength of the application. These things require no extra work. So keep this in mind for later. And as I mentioned earlier, the importance of building a school list. It's not just the names of the schools, but let's also be mindful about options that play to our interest, i.e. the part of the country we want to be, the setting. If you want to have classes that aren't much bigger than the classes you're taking in high school right now, is to be open-minded to private schools that are known for being generous for merit scholarships. Alex, why don't you talk to us about the importance of a strategic major selection?
Yes, definitely. So it's critical to understand that with the high number of applicants at some of these impacted majors, they're focusing on certain majors. And so with the approach, we understand that there may be students who have a 4.8 or who have a 4.7 who do not get into biology, psychology, mechanical engineering, business, where offered at certain UC campuses, for example, and students may have a slightly lower GPA and get into a less impacted major. So major choice really does have a determining factor in getting into some of these highly impacted schools. And so what Greg will talk in a moment and cover in depth is being strategic with major selections, but also understanding that it's not as cut and dried as applying for a less impacted major at a competitive school and switching out. And so it's really being strategic with major selections, understanding that selecting certain majors can drastically affect your opportunity of getting into certain colleges.
Yes, Alex, that's a great introduction to this. Again, we're going to keep it high level today, but I just have to read this quote out of the Los Angeles Times, where they interviewed UC Irvine admissions officers. And this is the exact same practices in all UC campuses. Now, some universities, before I even read that quote, let me back up for a moment. At some universities, there is not, admissions decisions are made for the entire applicant pool without any regard to which major you select. Stanford's one of them, for example. But the UCs make admissions decisions based on a major by major basis. So while a representative from a university may come say it's not a factor, when they're speaking, because they want you to be honest, because they don't want necessarily people trying to be strategic with this. When they're speaking with the media, they're being very candid. And I just have to read this quote because it speaks for itself. And I know everyone on this webinar can read, but per the LA Times, majors matter, they say. At UC Irvine, admissions officers had to review 108,000 applications for freshman spots. Almost half of the students applied to just 6 of 85 majors, with biological science the top choice, selected by nearly 12,000 applicants. Other popular majors were business, nursing, computer science, and psychology. So 12,000 people are applying for the bio program at UC Irvine. It doesn't mean that there's 10 times the number of spots for biology that there are for any other major in the liberal arts program. So we encourage our students that we work with to be very thoughtful about the majors they are selecting. Now, what does that mean? Thoughtful as to, I had once had a student that went to Pacific Ridge up in Carlsbad, who when I shared this information with said, you know, Greg, my top choice of universities is Brown. I'm gonna go apply to the Egyptology program at Brown because who would ever do that? And I asked the student, okay, go find Egypt on the map for me first. And she couldn't do it. And it's not that you need to be great at geography to get into an Ivy League university. What the point I'm trying to make is that if you are wanting to apply to a less impacted major, as we mentioned earlier in this presentation, that the 3 key traits that they're looking for are grit, leadership, and passion. Passion is passion for an intended academic subject. You need to engage in experiences that are related to that major, because if you've done nothing with ancient Egypt, and you can't even find it on the map for Pete's sake, I don't think that's going to be that persuasive for Brown, and they're going to be able to see right through it. Now, what we encourage our students to do is to be open-minded with applying to majors that allow them, that are in close proximity to their fields if they're impacted, that allow them to change. Not every major you can change into. Nursing, computer science, engineering, and sometimes business programs, depending on the university, can be what we call as fenced off, meaning if you don't get in as a freshman, odds are you're not going to be able to study it once you show up or change or finagle your way in. But we have students that are strategic and build stories for majors within the same college. So like the UCs all have an arts and sciences program. We're all chemistry, bio, physics, English, history, all in the same college. And there's a lot of flexibility within that. And so we want to be open-minded with the experiences and the essays that you're writing when the time comes, that it just may not make a lot of sense to put yourself in the most competitive pool when it comes to, and again, which major to apply to is 100% your choice, We just want you to understand how this process works and for you to make informed decisions and to adopt a strategy that actually prepares you to stand out and earn admission. And part of this is just when there's just so many people applying, when there's 12,000 people applying for the bio program at UCI, can we even guarantee that they'll read your application? When there's no guarantees in this. And so keeping an open mind, this is probably the most important lever you can pull once you have the grades, once you have the test score, once you have the activities that demonstrate how you've grown and the perspective you've gained. But we think for sophomores, it's particularly helpful to be thoughtful about when it comes to activities or experiences, what am I engaging in that will allow me to build a story for call it a cluster of academic programs that may give me the best chance of getting into a university. So keep an open mind and be strategic and stay in your own lane in this. We have so many students say, I have to study biology in college because I want to be a doctor. One, you can be any type of major in med school so long as you do your pre-med requirements. But two, like just read the facts. Like let's not, it's not about what we feel we have to, or I'm less of an applicant or anything else. It's just, let's just understand how the way this world is working today and use it to our advantage. And this is something that when we do with our students is make sure that they're telling a story that gives them the best chance of getting in. And for schools where you can't change your majors, where Alex went, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, changing majors there is like, I don't know, cutting the line of the DMV. It's just never going to happen. So this depends on schools, and this strategy should be school specific. But if you're being thoughtful as a sophomore, you have the time to develop that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in terms of like the formal advice for this evening is concerns about disclosing your applicant background. And I'm going to speak very candidly because I think this anxiety exists with certain populations within our community more than others. If you are concerned that by nature of who you are, and I'll just be blunt, if you're concerned that being Asian American is going to put you at a disadvantage in this process because you are concerned that you are overrepresented as an applicant applying to top or very selective schools, I think you have every reason to be concerned. You are not required to ever disclose your race, your religion, your wealth, or your parents' education status, or even your gender. These are all protected classes, meaning in this country, there has been a history of discrimination on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, religion, poverty, applying for jobs, applying for grad school or undergrad, applying for a mortgage. These questions you do not have to answer because in the past there's been evidence that this has been used to discriminate. And so if you're concerned, gosh, I'm an Asian American male and I'm going to be applying for computer science in 2 years, you can leave that question blank. And some folks, I know, were wondering why I even brought this up, because I know this is they may not realize that this is such a big point of anxiety for those that this is affected, this currently affects. Affirmative action, the use of affirmative action in higher education decisions will be reviewed by the Supreme Court in this current term, and this may be a moot point if it is deemed impermissible to allow by the time you all apply. I just have to bring this up now because I know there are folks that are concerned about this. Just know that you're not required to answer this question. Yes, if your last name is what I call like a dead giveaway, that your family's from China or Korea, that's okay. We just don't want a computer algorithm putting you into a potentially more competitive pool. And again, and this is just, again, we lean into our strengths. We don't worry what's outside of our control. So you can leave this question blank if it's still being asked by the time you apply. And we'll just evaluate that and be reporting back to you as that case is tried and decided in the Supreme Court. So we will be doing one additional event for our sophomores as we head into summer, which is just in 3 weeks from now, a webinar where we're going to be talking about building that story. What are the activities and experiences that will give you the biggest impact? And this will take place on Wednesday, March 2nd at 6:30 on the live cast. Now, in addition to our webinar that we're going to be providing, we encourage you to take advantage of any of the incredible resources that your guidance counselors at any of the high schools that are planning for you in the spring or in the coming year. They are dedicated to helping you in this journey, just as, and have some great resources at the district, at the individual sites as well, and on the district's website. And we are always here as well to help you make the most of this guidance process with strategy and guidance. So if you have questions or interested in learning more, feel free to visit our website, which is kaplaneducationalgroup.com, or to contact Alex via email or via the phone. And we're happy to discuss things or strategies or what it would mean to receive additional guidance in this process. I'm going to take it off the slide deck for now to close this presentation, because I know when it comes to applying to college, and even all the different things that you may have to do may, inspire a little bit of anxiety or stress if you've been listening to this. And I think that is, it's understandable. This process is, you can feel like, is anything ever going to be good enough when you hear about these statistics or you hear these stories? But what I want everyone who is listening tonight to do is to become excited about applying to college. Why? Because this is a process that rewards your personal growth. It's designed to measure how you've grown in high school and how you are developing the skills to advocate for yourself and demonstrate your ability to add value to an organization. Right now, you're thinking about colleges. 4 years from then, it may be grad school or your first job out of college. 10 years from now, it may be starting your own business and you're pitching investors. This is a skill set that you can develop with time, that you will be rewarded incredibly for learning how to figure out, to implement a strategy to achieve your goals, and also how to make the case for your unique ability to add value to any organization. And I want everyone to recognize that this is the first time that you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. And it may feel a little uncomfortable or nerve-wracking, but our hope is that with strategy and guidance and a plan, that you can make the most of it. And as I mentioned before, there is not one college out there that has a monopoly on the path to success. And I think part of this process also requires us to have the conviction and the confidence in our own abilities to make the most of this journey. Because it's not about where you go to school. One of my closest friends from Penn has multiple Ivy League degrees and has never been able to find a job or get a job. And part of the problem is he doesn't need to work, but it's not the degree that is going to set you up for success, but the skills, the perspective, and the experiences you have in high school and college are going to equip you with the foresight and the ability to make the most of every situation in life. And so it's not, if I don't get into Harvard or UCLA, I'm not going to be able to achieve my dream of becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a successful tech startup person, whatever it is that you want to do. It's not the school. It's what the school will equip you with, which are the skills and the perspective you need to make the most of it. So let's have faith in ourselves. Let's have faith in our kids that they will develop into the people that these educations will support, and not the other way around. Your college education is a means to an end. And while we want you to, get into a school that you're incredibly proud of attending and excited to go to, I want you to be excited for what your education will entail for your personal development, regardless of where you're going to school. And so this is one of those processes where it rewards you putting your best foot forward, giving your best shot, and growing as a person, and seeing how you can make your education fit for you. And that's why I love this process. And that's why I can speak for both Alex and I, is that we have so much fun, because when we see students who are nervous about applying to college or families that are stressed, we always want to say, like, hey, this is just like, you can make the magic happen. It may not be necessarily the path that you intended, but you can make it happen if you have the confidence in yourself. And at the same time, do everything you can that is healthy and makes sense and meaningful to you as a person, to earn admission to schools that are great fits for you. And so shoot your shot at some of these really tough schools if that's what you want to do, and do the things that actually matter in this process. And By doing that, you're going to develop the skills where you're going to learn how to hone in on what actually matters in this process. You'll set yourself up for success when it comes to applying for college. And more importantly, you're going to develop the skills you need to go through this process when it comes to applying for jobs or grad school or pitching your startup. And that's what this is all about, is the world of possibilities that exists for you when it comes to your education and what it's designed to lead you to. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening tonight. It's been such a pleasure and privilege to get to speak to you. We're always available for questions or if you're interested in learning more. And we're so excited to see all of you on March 2nd. And if you have children that are younger or older, we will be doing grade specific workshops as well for 9th graders, for middle school students and seniors. And as always, we welcome your feedback. And also the school board president, Maureen Momure, is open to any and all feedback, because we are doing what we can to help you, and we welcome your feedback. So we encourage you to do that. We look forward to hearing from you. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for listening tonight, and just we wish you the best of luck in this journey. And we are so excited to see what you accomplish in the years to come. So thank you again, and have a wonderful night.